This is for NIDA. It's Neuro-Immune Disease Alliance Incorporated. It's a long name, so we affectionately call it NIDA. And we call it neuroimmune disease because that's what chronic fatigue syndrome is. And so you're going to hear more about it, but it's a neuroimmune disease which really affects mostly the brain and the immune system. And it's not just somebody being tired and fatigued, and I've had that before, and it basically I'm over it in 2 weeks. This is lifelong. There's no cure, and right now there's no real treatment. So we are on a quest. We're on a quest to help our daughter, and we're on a quest to help 4 other million people just in the United States alone that have this illness, and there are obviously millions in other countries as well. Thank you. So what is NIDA, and why did we start this foundation? Chronic fatigue syndrome, myalgic encephalomyelitis, we didn't even know how to pronounce that for months. Myalgic encephalopathy, there's a lot of different names. They're trying to now call it in the United States ME-CFS. ME for myalgic encephalomyelitis, CFS for chronic fatigue syndrome. So we'll be calling it a few different things while we're talking, but they're really trying to get a name for it because chronic fatigue syndrome is a really bad name. And the CDC gave it that name years ago, and it's stuck. And people think that people are just fatigued. And really, fatigue is the least of it. In fact, Jenny didn't even hit fatigue, which by the time she was diagnosed, I said the one thing she doesn't have is fatigue. So once it kicked in, but in the beginning it wasn't fatigue. So it's a real misnomer. And so now they're going to hopefully get a name called ME-CFS. So we're going to talk both chronic fatigue syndrome, ME-CFS. It's all the same thing. No matter what you call it, though, it's an illness that really takes your life away. But it's not fatal. So you live a long time, maybe in bed your whole life. Maybe you're young and you're able to live as Jenny has and others have that are able to get their life back. But most people, and most of the research that I have done, and most of the research that the researchers have done, are that people are bedridden their whole life. And so this is a really, really serious illness. And there are lots of serious illnesses out there that you could support and that we support, but this is one of them that we're trying to make aware of people because there are literally millions and millions of people who have this. Our mission is to spread awareness because most people and most doctors, and even when Don was in the hospital, we talked about what we were going to do today, they haven't even heard of chronic fatigue syndrome. And these are the specialists in a very big, large hospital, not in a real small rural community. So we're trying to get awareness out to doctors, to people, that if you hear of somebody who is really sick, and they're sick for a long time, and you know about this a little bit, you can say to them, have your doctor look, maybe it's chronic fatigue syndrome. Not that there's a treatment right now, but at least they can know where to look and where to focus some of their efforts. I mean, we spent months going to doctors and having tests and scans and anything you could possibly have. We flew every place we could think of for Jenny to have tests. And we had no idea what she had. We didn't know if she was dying. We didn't know if she was going to be here next month. We all pretended that next week she would be perfectly fine and go back to school and her life would go back to normal. But that isn't the way it happened. And we didn't know what was wrong. So everybody kept saying, what's wrong with Jenny? What's wrong? I don't know. I don't even know if she's dying from this cancer that we can't find. So most of you who know us and who knew us then knew what we were going through, just trying to find out what she had. When she finally was diagnosed and we found out she wasn't going to die, that was the first cheer. That was the first big, big milestone, knowing what she had. When we found out there was no treatment, that was another whole thing. But at least we knew what she had, and we knew it was not fatal. So then we went on a quest to, what do we do now? So our biggest reason originally for setting this up was awareness. But as we ended up trying to think of where we want to raise funds for, because awareness is not something you need to raise funds for as much. And there was an entire group that was doing awareness on television and magazines, and some of you, many of you, have sent us articles in newspapers and New York Times and LA Times that have been coming up about chronic fatigue syndrome because awareness has been spread the last 2 years, actually. I mean, this has been going on for over 25 years that they've known about this. The last 2 years have been really a push for awareness. But we want to now focus on looking for a method for diagnosing and a method for treatment. And that's our mission. We want to help our daughter, and we want to help everybody else by finding some type of treatment to get rid of this. As you all know, Jenny was diagnosed in 2006. A parent's nightmare. We didn't know where to turn. We were so helpless. Jenny's life had just begun. She went from being an independent, very independent teenager to a totally dependent child. What was wrong with her? Our hearts were broken. Many days, Jenny couldn't even lift her head. She was bedridden. It was an effort just to eat, to sleep, to get in a car or airplane to go to doctor after doctor. And our only outings were going to doctors and having tests done. Every week we told Jenny that it's going to be okay. 2 years later, she was able to go back to school. Jenny and I talked about writing a book and going on Oprah to tell the world that there's a real disease and that money needs to be raised to do research. Why isn't the government helping with this? There are so many people who were sick. We never got around to Oprah, and Jenny never got cured, but Jenny got better. And we'll be talking later, and those of you who know her, she doesn't even look sick. She hides it very, very well. And chronic fatigue syndrome, they also did an awareness campaign of how people look when they have chronic fatigue syndrome. And you'd think that they looked fatigued and sick. They don't. So people around you who have this look perfectly fine. And they have trouble at work and in their lives, that people think they're lazy. And the truth is that for some reason, in this illness, you don't look sick. You feel it. And you have your days that you don't even leave the house. But the days you don't leave the house, you look pretty bad. But you haven't left the house. On the days that you look okay to go outside, you look okay. People don't believe you're sick. Our personal fear, however, and the real reason that we're doing this, is that we're afraid of relapse. And we've heard too many stories of people who have this because you have it. It doesn't go away. You can relapse. So we're here basically to look for a treatment because if she relapses, she will need something. Her immune system is not what it should be. She gets sick more than most. Jenny knows her limits, but it prevents her from doing a lot of things that she would really like to do. When the flu season comes around, 4 to 6 months of the year, we get very nervous that she may catch the flu. But we're more nervous that she'll have a relapse if she has a vaccine. So she can't get any vaccines. So anything that's out there that she should have a vaccine for, and people with chronic fatigue should get vaccines so they don't get sick, they can't because the vaccine may kick in an immune response, which may kick in chronic fatigue syndrome, a worst case, and it's happened too many times. Those of you who knew us when Jenny was sick know firsthand how the illness impacted our whole family. For 2 years, we constantly canceled plans last minute, left dinners early, or just could not go to important events because we needed to stay home with our daughter. Somebody needed to always stay home with her. Sometimes she fainted, so we couldn't even let her really get up out of bed and go to the bathroom without somebody being there because she was liable to faint and be out for 20 minutes. I mean, we could not leave her. Our lives had changed, as well as hers. From making plans to living day by day, most of them were hour by hour. Is today a good day or a bad day? The whole family would ask us. We would ask ourselves that. Wherever we go, we would see where the urgent care is, and we would usually end up there. Jenny and I joke about how many urgent cares we've been to all over the place. Over 4 million people have this terrible illness, but this illness affects so many more. The family and friends of all those who are ill. Many are bedridden, as we said, and they need constant care. The majority of them are not even diagnosed. And that's the real crime. Most of the people who have it are not diagnosed. The doctors have told them there's nothing that they can do for them. When we first decided to set up this NIDA, I had told somebody about it, and they had said, you know what, I know about chronic fatigue. A friend of mine committed suicide last week in Hawaii because the doctors in Hawaii told her there's nothing more they can do. Now, those that have been sick and bedridden and have been told that, I mean, you can understand how they feel if there's nothing ever is going to happen to help them. We're all thankful and blessed because Jenny is doing quite well overall, but we can't stop here. We want Jenny cured. We want to know that if Jenny gets a relapse, she will not suffer long and a treatment can be given to help. So NIDA was established 2 years ago, but we wanted to wait to launch it until we found the best way possible to help. We're not going to ask our friends and family for help until we truly believed it could make a difference. The pilot study that you will hear about today, testing spinal fluid to look for a diagnostic tool and treatment, could help Jenny and others tremendously. We need this research, but it takes personal quests to raise funds enough to fund a research project that the drug companies and NIH will not fund. If this pilot is successful, however, then the big money will come from that arena. But you have to do these pilot studies first, on your own, and for personal funds. If this pilot study shows no positive effects, then this tells the researchers to look somewhere else. So this is successful too. So we're hoping for a positive response. However, if it's not, then we move on to something else. Our mission is to spread the word via Facebook, Twitter, or the old-fashioned word of mouth. If you hear of someone with this kind of illness, you can suggest they ask their doctor. You can give them our website, of which we will build up with more information and links for more information for doctors and patients. We've just created the website, and it's actually on the back of one of the things that are on your table. But I need to work on it and add to it, and we will be adding more and more links for patients and doctors. I would like to now call up the bravest kid that I know, and my inspiration for not letting anything keep you down and for living life to our very fullest, our daughter, Jenny Tannenbaum.